queue up the slides. And Ross, I'll turn it over to you to get us started.
Great. Welcome, everybody. Where did we go to the next slide? So we're going to really try to capture basically what this thing is that we call community integration. You can end up looking at community integration as sort of this delivery model, like a way in which you kind of serve people, and not necessarily see that it has a certain philosophy behind it. There's actually a way of looking at people and their recovery that's based on this. So let me talk a little bit about what community integration is and how to think about it in its smallest form. Any time that you're helping a client actually think about the world outside your office and you're helping them directly in engaging in that world, you're engaged in community integration. So anytime you're thinking about what they're doing out there and you're working alongside them and trying to get them to that thing, that's community integration. So that's somewhat different on some level than thinking about somebody as a sort of a series of symptoms that you're working on. It's really about where are they headed in life and how do I get them to that. And when you're really doing community integration, it's not simply doing therapy about how to get there. In other words, what's in your way to getting there, but it's actually helping them get there. So when community integration on the farthest end of the continuum is done, you're with the client in the community. You're helping them in a therapeutic way engage in that community. So that's really what community integration is, community integration work. And for people who have had really extreme psychiatric experiences or very difficult times with problematic habits, their main concern on some level is this issue of being separate from the community, not a part of things. And it may even be that their central source of suffering is not really their symptom or their habit. Their central source of suffering is this sense of isolation and disconnection from the world and a lack of purpose. Can you go to the next slide? This is called the Lambert pie, and it's a very fascinating thing that they do actually every 10 years. They look at what causes change in people. And if you look at the top blue corner, 15% of what affects change in people has to do with the model we use. So this idea of best practices, it's helpful to us in some ways, but the reality is that there's something else in people's lives that's much stronger in therapy that goes across every single therapy. In other words, the curative force in every single therapy is this one thing. And that curative force is the ability for the therapist to build a collaborative relationship with the client. And a collaborative relationship means a relationship where you're trying to help the client go where they want to go. And when somebody has suffered from these kind of extreme events, sometimes that collaboration takes more than a conversation. It takes really working alongside the person. But if you look at that green block in there, 40% of what affects a person's change is what's happening around them in the world. And so if you combine those two things, you get 70%. 70% of what a community integration program is doing is trying to change the world around the person, trying to build purpose and meaning and connectedness in their lives, and it's doing it in this collaborative way. And by the way, it's engaged in the placebo effect too, which is hope, and it's engaged in using models. That's really the idea. Now, not everybody needs community integration. You can go to a psychotherapist and talk and get better if you haven't been sort of injured in certain ways. But some people, especially people that have been in and out of institutions, they need this help getting reintegrated in the world. Next slide, please. We think of this as a problem of psychosocial recovery, that a person is recovering from these powerful, powerful injuries in their lives regarding stigma, ostracism, and treatment itself. This experience of people making them sort of into things that are operated on in institutions, and the kind of pain and the kind of disruption to their identity that happens through treatment. So community integration in some ways is trying to help people recover from some of the injuries caused by treatment. Next slide. We actually know through social psychology that there are significant and powerful forces in our social existence. And a matter of fact, if each of you thought about what your life is like on a daily basis, the painful experiences you have during that day, I bet rarely you think, oh, that's my problem. That's my thing causing it. That's my thing. You're thinking, what happened in that interaction? What happened here? Why am I feeling that way here? It has to do with your state, not your trait. We know that when somebody's lonely, they're actually at as high a risk for heart disease as somebody who has high cholesterol, smokes too much. And that's because of all the cortisol in their system. They're completely stressed all the time. We know that ostracism affects the same part of the brain where pain hits. We know that a loss of purpose demotivates people. And we know that a loss of social support makes people seem threats as more threatening and challenges as more difficult. And those four things are happening all the time to psychiatric patients. And so the idea that we're going to serve these people only in an office and not kind of look at how we're helping them get the medicine of connection, get the medicine of purpose out there, is kind of a fallacy. We have to get them to that place, and they need our help getting there. I believe that what happens when a person has had all these things is two things. One is they develop what I call a perturbed relationship with help. They don't metabolize what's given to them. They may smile in your therapy. They may act like they're getting something, but they're not really engaging, or they don't go at all, and they're demotivated. Sadly, our system of care defines these things as psychiatric issues. They're difficult to engage, they're treatment refractory, but I actually think it's this issue. And that's again why we need to hold their goals as important and show them that we want to pursue those goals with them, not just in a conversation in the office, but in helping them fill out a resume, helping them take that resume to work, picking them up from work possibly, meeting them during their lunch breaks, whatever it takes to help that person get to the medicine of connection and purpose and role and value. Next slide. Here's another way to think about community integration. This is a very famous and very interesting anthropologist by the name of Gregory Bateson, and he talked about these two ways of looking at the world. One is to look at the world as a world of non-living things. That's for rocks. Rocks don't grow, they don't adapt, they don't respond to their environment. And to look at the world of living things. Living things grow, they respond to their environment, they adapt, and you have to think about what's around them when you help them. And he used a very interesting word for what happens when we treat a living thing like a non-living thing. And that word's violence. That we really injure people when we think of them as these broken things that go into institutions. It's like taking your car to the shop. You send them to this institution, they get out the right screwdriver for the right problem, they fix the person, and they're released back to the community without any supports. Community integration is about treating the person as a living system, as a living being with a world around them. Next slide. I hope we can make this work. This is a book that I wrote with one of our staff, Ian Collins, and this is a video of that book. Meredith, are we able to show that? Oh. We may not be able to, is that right?
Correct. Sorry, we're having some technical difficulties. Can we speak to it, please?
Can we what? I can move on. Oh.
Yes, we'll need to move on that point.
That's fine, yeah. But let's move on in the slides to the place I was right after that. You know, if you remember your biology courses in high school, they would define what a living thing is. Living things are always adapting. They're always taking in their world. They're always oriented towards growth. They produce, and they live in environments. And community integration programs are really about an approach to people in this crazy idea that they're living beings and that we need to model our treatment around them. And as a matter of fact, we as programs have to become more like living beings. We have to adapt to what's going on for them. You can't do that necessarily if they're going to some sort of regimented treatment where they go to an appointment once a week or twice a week. You have to be able to kind of move your treatment around them. They're constantly bringing in something else from the world, so they're constantly changing. And so you have to be respectful of that too and be able to change and move your treatment around them. They're growing, and so things have to adapt. You have to respect the fact that they're going to continue to feel injured if they're not producing, if they're not productive, if they don't have purpose. Purpose is directly connected to our sense of value in the world, that we have something to contribute. People do not recover without having some sense of purpose. They also don't recover without feeling like there's social supports and people around them who are supporting them. And so we need all these things, and community integration is really this model that's trying to assertively get the person those things. Next slide. So now actually I'm going to hand this over to Amanda to talk about the sort of the core tenets of community integration.
Thank you. Thanks, Ross. I am going to pick up right now and talk about some of the services that we typically see in community integration programs, and really the core tenets of those services. So first and foremost, the services must be individualized. We must, in a community integration program, recognize that each client is a living being with really unique goals, aspirations, and dreams. And the treatment plans that we create for these clients need to reflect that. There is no place for those cookie cutter treatment plans in a community integration program. So each client that comes in has their own schedule, has their own plan, and they are co-creating this with their coach, with their therapist. For some clients, they might want to be involved in a lot of groups. For others, they might do better with more one-on-one work. Others might really sort of gravitate and respond really well to skills-focused works. Others might like health and wellness. So, you know, the options are endless, but the options must be congruent with who the client is and who the client is telling you they are, not who you think the client should be, or not who you want the client to be, or not who their parents want them to be. It's really about them, and it's individualized and congruent with their authentic self at that moment in time. And if that changes 1 month, 2 months in, which it often does, then the treatment plan is then changed to reflect who they are at that moment. Second, all the work that we do must be collaborative. We are a co-pilot. We are not a, sole flyer of the plane in any way, shape, or form. And our clients' voices matter. Our clients' voices matter most. And it is our job to listen. And if we listen, we will hear what their goals are, and we will reflect through the services that we are providing interventions that will help them to achieve those goals. And when you're working with a younger population, especially like we do at the dorm, we often find that when parents call, they have one set of goals. And then you actually meet with the client and they have another set of goals. And I'll give an example of this. We worked with a client who absolutely brilliant, testing through the roof, IQ probably one of the highest that I've seen. And her parents wanted her to go to a certain Ivy League school, graduate, go on to get, a graduate degree, and work in a field similar to her parents, doctors, lawyers, bankers. That was not what our client wanted. Our client was also very skilled and talented as an artist, and she loved makeup. And what her goal was in life was that she wanted to really study makeup and the application of makeup so that she could be on set in Broadway shows and doing all of the creative makeup design. That was her goal in life. So not only did we have to collaborate with her in creating and structuring a treatment plan that would reflect and help her to reach that goal, we also had to create a plan for working with her parents to help them to relinquish what their goal was for her and to accept what their daughter wanted for herself. The third component that I want to talk about is that the team must be multidisciplinary. When we approach care from a community integration model, there must be a multidisciplinary approach. And that multidisciplinary approach is as multifaceted as the clients are themselves. So it is not just one person and one person only that is working with a client. It is a team of professionals from a variety of different backgrounds and theoretical orientations and mindsets that work with the client. Anything from a social worker to a health and wellness professional, a psychiatrist, academic tutor. This diversity in the treatment team will reflect the various goals that the client has and want to accomplish. Fourth, we need to be flexible and we need to be responsive. This treatment approach must be fluid, and we must understand that plans will change and evolve as the client changes and evolves. And that's what we want. We want our clients to be changing and evolving as they are identifying what makes them passionate and what drives them and what motivates them in life, what their goals are. They might think one month that they want to major in mathematics at a university, and then they start taking math classes and they decide that math isn't for them. And that's okay, because learning what isn't for you helps get you one step closer to learning what may be for you. And we need to be as responsive and as flexible as needed as things change. Treatment plans can also change because clients go through difficult times. So clients might get to a place where they are integrated in the community. They are working, they're volunteering, they're back in school, they have a friend group. And then all of a sudden it's finals time and their significant other breaks up with them and they're feeling stressed and they're feeling anxious and they need their team around them again. And we need to be able to respond to that need as it comes up. Services must be centered around acceptance. As Ross talked about earlier, there is so much stigma and ostracism and shame associated not only with mental illness, but also with mental health treatment. And a lot of clients leave treatment experiences feeling just as ashamed as they did when they entered. And community integration models really seek to create an environment that is non-judgmental, that is constantly validating the client, and that espouses mutual support. In order for treatment to truly be centered and grounded in acceptance, we found that we really need to do a lot of work with the family as well and with the parents as well, because oftentimes they struggle with the acceptance part. They struggle with the shame part, and we need to help educate them as to the impact that that type of shame and stigma has on their young adult child. Community integration programs are goal-oriented, always goal-oriented. We want to help our clients to find their purpose and to regain their motivation in life. Many of our clients come to us and the feeling of apathy and lack of interest in anything, it's almost visceral. You can feel it when you're sitting in a room with them. And if you ask them, when was the last time that you felt excited about something? When was the last time that something made you feel a sense of purpose or passion? It can be hard for them to identify that time. And it is our goal to help them to tap in and to dig in and to find that, to find those things that make them want to wake up in the morning and make them want to leave the door every single day and go out and enter into the world. So the work that we do is, of course, clinically informed, but it's also very coaching driven and very goal oriented. And we need to set up goals that are achievable and milestones that are achievable, that are measurable and that are objective, because each time a client experiences a success, it motivates them for the next success. And it boosts their self-esteem, it boosts their motivation, it boosts their sense of efficacy. Community integration programs should be community building, and they should be fun. You know, we always want to place a major emphasis on helping clients to gain or regain their social support network through a variety of different social activities. These can be clubs, social groups, clubhouse activities. It could be as simple as playing board games or ping pong or pool with their friends. It might be weekend activities. It might be rock climbing or trapeze school or laser tag, whatever it is. Connecting with others in the environment, engaging in activities that make you laugh, that make you smile, that you have fun with is integral to community integration programs. Similarly, we want to foster connection. Again, as Ross spoke about earlier, many of our clients struggle with a very profound and a very deep loneliness as a result of some of the illnesses that they have been struggling with, and also their treatment experiences. And whether somebody is struggling with addiction or an eating disorder or feeling depressed or anxious, loneliness is often at core. And we want to help foster connection, not only with peers, but also with staff, because it is through these connections that clients really start to feel better. Ross, I think you had said that there's a medicine in connection, and there's a curative factor, a curative thing that happens when we connect to one another and the world around us. I'm going to talk a little bit more specifically about some of the stuff that we do at the dorm that is congruent with the community integration model, and look at the services that take place within our four walls, and then also the services that take place mostly outside of four walls. The first thing is therapy. All of our clients do participate in individual and group therapy. That is more conventional in nature. That said, how often they participate in therapy, the types of therapy that they participate in, is largely driven by them. Some clients really, really benefit from therapy 4 or 5 times a week. For others, that is not what works for them. They do much better in group settings or with more skills-based focused coaching. So we let the clients drive it, but it is part of the service offering. The second aspect that we do is skills-based clinical coaching. So all of our coaches are licensed clinicians, and we use licensed clinicians in this role very purposefully. We have found that some of the most important work takes place while doing coaching activities. So most of the coaching takes place outside of the four walls. That can be in the client's apartment. It can be walking down the street. It can be on the basketball court. It can be taking a train because they struggle with getting from place A to place B because of anxiety or other different phobias. But coaching is creative, and coaching takes place outside of a conventional clinical setting. When we step outside of a clinical setting, ironically, is often when many of our clients start to feel comfortable talking about clinical issues. And that is precisely why all of our coaches are licensed clinicians. In-home coaching is really very targeted around specific areas, basic ADLs, wake-up support, medication management, budgeting, cooking, cleaning. A lot of our clients have been unable to live in a community because they have not learned certain skills that are necessary to be able to thrive in a community. And it's our job to practice those skills with them until they can learn to do them on their own. Academic and vocational coaching. These are things that can happen both within and outside of the four walls. Most of our academic coaching takes place inside the facility. However, accessing academic supports on campuses are things that coaches can do with clients, meaning walk to the campus with them, identify where the student service center is, and then help them go in and identify the services that they need there. Vocational coaching, similar, you know, for practicing interviewing skills or just general communication and presence coaching, that might take place on site. But many clients then want to be walked as they're handing out resumes because it's scary for them. They haven't done that on their own before. And the coach will walk up and down Columbus Avenue or 18th Street in DC and hand out resumes. Health and wellness services, mindfulness, meditation, yoga, personal training. These are integral to our approach, and these are getting clients out into the community, either one-on-one at first with certain health and wellness professionals, but then the goal is at the local yoga studio, at the local cycling class, at the local rowing class, because that gives clients the opportunity to engage in life outside of treatment. Parent and family work, you know, as I talked about earlier, this is so key. There's often very complicated dynamics going on in the family system that is preventing our young adult clients from launching and from truly integrating and finding purpose in their community. And with the best of intentions and lots of love in their hearts, sometimes parents are doing things that are hindering their young adult child from thriving. So we always want to really work with the parents on helping them to identify what things they need to change. So all of our parents get their own coach who they meet with on a weekly basis. They can get a 5-minute update on how their child is doing, but then the rest of the time, 55 minutes is spent talking about them and the changes that they need to make. At the dorm, we do community meetings. The dorm is a community. We are more of a closed system, but we still are a system. And we believe that this microsystem provides our clients with opportunities to learn and practice skills so that they can step out into a larger macro system outside of the dorm. We do community meetings once a week where we talk about community-related issues, where clients are empowered to give us feedback of changes that they want to see made in the community, whether that's different board games on site, different food that's brought into the kitchen, or community-related initiatives around service or volunteering. But giving them ownership over their own community empowers them to be productive and purposeful members in the outside community. In our community clubhouse, we have lots of opportunities for connection, for fun, for social events, board games, movie nights, ping pong, pool, talent shows. Community events happen on a regular basis, at least weekly, on site at the dorm. And then the last thing that we do is we really encourage our clients to become active members in the outside community to the best that they can at that point in time. And there's wonderful opportunities for volunteering, for partnering with other organizations in the neighborhood, and allowing our clients to find a sense of purpose through helping others and through giving back. And we do that as a group. They can do that on their own with their coach, but there is a big stress on giving back and on volunteering. And then COVID hits. And how do we run a community integration program during coronavirus? Well, the answer is we kept everything largely the same. It was largely the same, except it went virtual. And we really had to get creative and be flexible ourselves in making sure that everything that we offered to our clients pre-COVID was also accessible to them during coronavirus. In fact, if anything, we added on additional supports, knowing that this time in history was not just creating a pandemic that impacted people's physical health, but we are in the middle of a mental health crisis. So in addition to converting our entire group schedule to a virtual platform, we also made sure that all of our clients had additional check-ins. So every client had a check-in in the morning and at night to help them to start the day and set intentions for the day. And then at the end of the day, to reflect on how the day went, what worked today, what could maybe work better tomorrow, and then some sleep routine check-ins. We really wanted to emphasize to our client that social distancing did not need to mean social isolation. So we even had our entire clubhouse running virtually every day. So clients could pop in, pop out, do board games virtually, and do different activities on a virtual platform. We increased our self-care and wellness programming, so lots more opportunities to move around as we're spending more time behind a computer screen. Moving is a lot more important, and making sure that we really strategically placed opportunities for yoga, for exercise, for mindfulness and meditation throughout the day was of the utmost importance during this time. We also found a lot of different virtual volunteering opportunities for our clients, and we ramped up weekend supports as well. Now that we're on the other side of the curve, at least for now, we're really able to provide more of a hybrid model of care, where we're able to do the things that we did pre-coronavirus in person, certain days of the week, but other days of the week, we really still are sticking to a more virtual platform. So this time is challenging. I think everybody is struggling to be active members in a community during a time when the community feels a little bit less safe because of a pandemic. So we're really, trying to be as flexible and creative in coming up with ways that are safe to still feel like members of A, the dorm community, but B, the community at large. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to Ross again, who's going to talk about Ellenhorn and the services that you guys are offering now.
Thanks. I think I'll talk more about this model than about us. And if you have questions about what we do, there's a lot of descriptions on our website. And I'm happy to talk to anybody about sort of the intricacies of what we do. But I think that the model is kind of important to talk about because it's really kind of an old model. And it really is the first community integration model on some level. And this is a model called PACT. You might hear about ACT. ACT and PACT are kind of the same thing. But what happened was they were closing down hospitals in Wisconsin. And they said, what would happen if we took the staff from the hospital and the clients from the hospital and we put them in the community? And we maintained the same level of multidisciplinary care and the same ability to respond on a dime as a hospital unit. And the same communication structure as a hospital. What would happen for the clients? And it so happened that if you did this intensely enough, they didn't need a hospital. But what they needed was a group of people that met every single morning for rounds, discussed what happened for the person in the last 24 hours, and every day created some sort of new plan about how to help that person with their recovery. And so that really is what PACT is. And there's certain rules that you kind of have to follow in PACT. And one is that 70% of what you're doing is not in the office. Now, PACT works with a certain set of people, like I said before. We work with people that are, in a derogatory way, called difficult to engage. These are people that don't walk into treatment. We actually say in our program that if somebody says to you in a therapy session, that thing you said last week, I applied to myself and it really worked, that probably is not somebody for us. We're talking about people that really have this perturbed relationship with getting help from others. And so PACT really needs to be 70% outside the office and in the community, visiting people in their own places. And the doctors are integral to the team. They're a central part of the team. And that's really important because if you're going to help a person who's really struggling both over how to connect with the world and struggling over psychiatric events or something related to a problematic habit, you need a lot of care for that person to kind of move back in the world. PACT has a different philosophy about readiness than inpatient units and residential programs. There's a lot of talk in our field about that person's not ready to have a romantic relationship. That person's not ready to go back to school. They're not ready for work. Our idea is the readiness is dependent on what the clinicians are willing to do. So if that means getting that person through class by taking that class with them, meeting with them during the lunch break, driving in the class, all those things should be happening. And in that, the doctor should be keeping track of what's going on pharmacologically for the person. Also, what happens in PACT is a person's medications begin to drop in their usage because the doctor is there at those meetings, kind of integrated on the team, hearing what's going on, and sort of seeing the whole person in that event. So PACT is really a communication model on some level based on this ability to be as completely flexible as possible. It's also individualized to the extreme because the clients we see are not people that are necessarily going to participate in groups. And so almost all of the contact is us in the community, side by side with the person, developing some sort of relationship with them regarding where they really want to go in life. And so that's really PACT. And it's, I mean, we hear this word best practice all the time, but it's been for years kind of the most research practice for helping people that have been defined, I wouldn't use this term, as severe and persistently mentally ill. People with really kind of extreme experiences. And those are our cases. We have this strange idea that somebody who's having hearing voices in an extreme way, or someone who's having a massive mood occurrence, isn't going to do good in a milieu, that they might be better off in an apartment with a lot of support. And so that this really is this kind of hospital without walls. This is really kind of the most robust version of community integration. And we're not the only ones doing it. There's a place called Westbridge in New Hampshire that does PACT. And we've actually sort of helped the Menninger Clinic create their own PACT program. So there's basically 3 privately paid for PACT programs in the United States that are really doing this thing where no service except in extreme cases is purchased outside the team. That the team is there, and the reason why you have this team around the person is because that team is meeting every single morning to think about that person. If you think in your own lives as clinicians, how much work you put into coordinating care and how poor that coordination is typically, how misunderstood everybody is when they try to coordinate care, a PACT program is really trying to take care of that, where the care is coordinated on a 24-hour basis. Every weekday, there's a communication. And you are providing 24-hour care. We would much rather show up at your door than the police, if possible. We're there to really kind of work the person through any kind of crisis, meet them in the ER if they get there, work on whether we want to kind of keep them out of the hospital if we can. All of those things are happening within this one model. So we're trying to kind of provide all care at the same time. So that's PACT. Ellenhorn's done a lot of innovative things with PACT. And again, at some other point, I'm happy to talk to you about it. But sort of an educational thing on community integration, it's important to understand that this model is kind of central. The other model that's kind of central to community integration is a clubhouse model. And on some level, in a marvelous way, the dorm has integrated some of the clubhouse philosophy into their work in a really great way. And there's these 2 kind of models that have always been there, focused on how to give a person a sense of purpose and connection. As far as our response to COVID, we have the opportunity, being a 70% out of the office program, if we can meet people outside in the community, to see some of our clients without creating, super spreader events of them going into an IOP or a group or something like that. We do now, just like the dorm, do this in a hybrid way. Most kind of therapeutic contexts that aren't about, integrating the person in the community, we're going to do virtually right now. But our kind of clients, they're not going to survive psychiatrically or socially without people coming to their own homes. This is not somebody who will do as well with just virtual care. So at first, we sort of shut that all down. And we experienced a loss in census because of that, because we sort of shut that down. But now we've reopened in a way where we're really kind of trying to get back to our community integration work. It's not 70% of the time, but it's getting there. And we're trying to kind of move back to that mode. That's how we kind of deal with the COVID crisis.
Thank you, Ross. Thank you for Amanda for this presentation and for everybody joining. We wanted to take, we have, roughly, I'd say 10 minutes or so for some Q&A. And I'm just gonna start with the chat box here. It looks like a question came in from Haley. What was the third-party private pay PAC program? Ellenhorn won in New Hampshire, and was there a second?
The Menninger Clinic has a PAC program that's really kind of, like I said, it's kind of modeled after our version of PACT. And then the oldest one of these private programs is in New Hampshire, and that's Westbridge. And they do something we do too, which is called IDDT, which is Integrated Dual Disorder Treatment. And that, again, is this sort of PACT for people that are having co-occurring events. And it's based, at least the way we do it, it's based on that belief, again, that being connected to your community is actually the medicine for addiction too, that addiction and attachment have this strong relationship, and that we're trying to help people, even if they're using, reconnect in their world. So I'm not sure that Westbridge is a harm reduction program. We work with people if they're using.
Thank you for that, Ross. So we're going to open it up for any further questions, comments. Please feel free to unmute yourself and jump in.
Okay, I'll jump in.
I like your image, Jeff.
I have one question where we're talking about destigmatizing and non-pathologizing, about using medical terms and diagnostic terms. And for example, our program, in our mission statement, we don't use the term mental illness. We try not to use disorder anywhere, particularly for issues that are psychosocial problems, much more than medical problems. So just want your guys' opinion on those.
Well, we definitely don't use that kind of language. We're pretty convinced that the moments when a person feels most stigmatized is typically in relationship to a clinician. That's what people will tell you, that's been their experience. That when somebody tells you you have a psychiatric issue, you don't actually hear the diagnosis. You hear the person saying, we're setting you on the outside of the tribe. That's really the message you're being told at that point. But stigma is a little deeper than just words. It's about the apparatus around the person, how they're being treated. Are they being told that because you have this disease or this problem, that this is the right group for you? Are they being told that they need to kind of be only with their kind to recover? There's all kinds of ways in which the medical model is not just about words, it's about how we sort of surround the person. And I think that the dorm and us are very sensitive to that we're thinking about how do you keep that person in the community and connected in that way, not just about the words. The words are important, but it's about how do you approach that person as a living system in the community.
Well, and I think related, you turned me on to the whole idea of the clinical gaze. And I think that's related to that in terms of the way that we look at people aside from, how we look at them.
One of the things I think that's unfortunate is that, our whole healthcare system has been built around diagnostic labels. And, you use diagnostic labels for insurance reimbursement purposes. It's almost like it's a language that has persisted despite not really being particularly useful. And many of our clients will come to us on, and sitting in an initial session with them, and you'll ask them who they are and what's going on. And they define themselves by their labels. They'll say, I'm depressed, I'm schizophrenic, I'm borderline. And when they say that, our response typically is, well, but what does that mean? Like, because we're not treating diagnoses, we're treating people. We're treating the experiences and the feelings that they're having that they don't like having, those feelings that feel like they are incongruent with genuine self, and trying to help them feel better from those experiences of those symptoms. So we're really trying to help our clients to move away from looking at themselves as a label. And also, we too do not, for our groups, for our clubhouse, we have clients who are diagnosed with a variety of different things in the same settings, interacting with each other, because they are so much more than their diagnosis or the label that has been given to them.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I think that that's just really an accurate view of how to treat people as human beings, you know? And I think an easier, and again, why community integration has this special kind of quality to it is, what if we thought about people as struggling with both strengths and barriers? And our job is to build a collaborative relationship around those strengths and barriers. So if hearing voices is a barrier, let's work on it. If hearing voices isn't a barrier, then it's not really part of our care. Because there's plenty of people out there that hear voices that do just great, right? And so a collaborative relationship is how we get you where you want to go and what's in the way. Not, this is an illness we have to get rid of, and that's the number one thing we're looking at. And that's not only, Jeff, it's not only about words, it's about my approach to this event. You know, I can call it psychosis, it's okay, but we're having a conversation about this, of whether it gets in the way or not, right? I will be a much more satisfied person about our care at Ellenhorn with a person who's still drinking but has a purposeful, meaningful life, right, than a person who stopped drinking and their life is empty, or a person who hears voices but they're married and connected, than a person who's tranquilized by some sort of medication and isn't connected to anybody. It just doesn't mean anything. We haven't achieved anything. And so the goal is, I just want to, so we don't want to throw out the idea that these are events, that these are important, and that there are barriers. We don't want to act like there is no such thing as these psychiatric things that hold people back. But let's approach them in a collaborative way, not a way in which it's like, this is the number one thing we have to get rid of, you know?
Right. And it's really looking at psychosis as a state and not about who someone is.
Right.
Because I think all of these things, even borderline states, I mean, we all experience them at different points. And it's a matter of looking at it in that way, that, you know, rather than othering people with through these labels, I think.
Yes. But, you know, you and I have argued about this for years.
Yeah, I know.
Because all I have to say is that the other side of it is that to have extreme attachment trauma is a big deal. And so we have to have conversations where we're also recognizing that an event is happening to a person, not just act like it's not there. You know, borderline might not be the right word for it, but it is important that we don't just sort of throw out the idea that we are working with people that are suffering from something going on in their brain and their mind that's affecting them.
I think it's more a matter of what we call it. I think that, yeah, you know, I think, like I said, I'm comfortable with saying people go into borderline states. And I think that some obviously are more easily triggered and become dysregulated much more. And that's what we work on with them, without having to label them as something being particularly wrong with them.
I just wanted to jump in here. Thank you both for this. We have a comment that just came into the chat box that I wanted to get to. What sort of positive and negative interaction does the dorm get from the external community?
Knock on wood. So far, we've actually had really, really positive experiences. Now, we're located in areas of Washington, D.C. and New York City that feel like little small communities, even though we're in a big city. When you're in DuPont Circle or on the Upper West Side, they're neighborhoods. And as a result of being in neighborhoods, we know the people downstairs and across the street at the pizza place and Gray's Papaya and the coffee shop. And, you know, we've been here for about 11 years, so we really know our neighbors, and as a result have been able to forge relationships with these people who understand who we are and what we do, and also forge relationships with other organizations that are serving people who are struggling with a variety of different things. So for instance, our clients go twice a week and volunteer at an organization called Gigi's House, where it's basically a clubhouse for individuals with Down syndrome, a variety of ages. And it's such a wonderful opportunity, again, for blending communities, bridging communities, and all people involved in the interactions and in the events that we have together feel good and benefit. And I think that's where healing happens for all involved.
wanted to piggyback on that as well. And this is in reference to what you guys were previously talking about. Take it a step further in getting the reactions that we've gotten from the treatment community. I think as we look at treatment, as we look at what Amanda and Ross were talking about in terms of diagnostic labels being very much linked to mental health coverage in particular, as we look to integrate a real sort of vast variety of different diagnostic profiles within a young adult age group in more of a clubhouse model, which the dorm does have, we get a lot of reactions within the treatment community. How is it that you can treat simultaneously within your milieu a 21-year-old with dual diagnosis, a 22-year-old with a psychotic disorder, and a 19-year-old with an eating disorder? How is it that you can do that simultaneously? And that's been one of the exciting parts for us to begin to experience, and now to really be engaged in some data formulation as well around it. Not only can you do that, but what that does is it immediately removes the stigma of that label, and allows people to step away from these sort of different diagnostic profiles that have showed up in all sorts of testing and meeting after meeting that they come to us with, and they begin to identify more as an emerging adult who's stuck, who's looking for connection. And we're able to integrate a lot of our skills training based upon this age group and sort of developmental state, rather than a particular diagnostic profile. So we have time for one more.
May I ask a question, or may I say something, please? My name's Ann Winter, and I just wanted to say, John, that's kind of leading edge, isn't it? That blending between these defined, whatever, I'm not sure what term to use, but it's really a beautiful idea.
It is, and I think, when Ross talked about the integration of community integration and clubhouse model, when you looked at sort of traditional clubhouse model, it blended diagnostic profiles largely because it wasn't based upon treatment. It was based upon community, and the community was the treatment. And what we are doing at the dorm is integrating that some sort of community integration piece, which offers that individualized care and treatment with a clubhouse mentality and philosophy that really removes stigma and diagnostic labels. So it's, it makes a lot of sense when you think about it, yet there's tremendous fear within our sort of mental health world, nationally, even privately, about sort of blending communities. And that very much has not been our experience. It's been the opposite.
How encouraging. Thank you.
All right, well, with that, we'll wrap up today's session. Thank you guys all for joining us.
Thank you.
Ross Ellenhorn, I appreciate you being a part of this today and joining us. We do this every Thursday at 3 o'clock. Next Thursday, we have treating screen addiction during COVID-19, an important conversation to be all of us engaged with right now, with Dr. Cash from Restart, which is a residential program treating screen addiction. So please look out for that invitation, and